What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, finally back to talk to you guys once again. I've missed you guys. It's been a long break, and we have the first fight card in the UFC of 2023. So, hope you guys had a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and are ready to get back to the chaos that we had in 2022 because first fight card of the year, UFC Vegas 67, Imavov versus Gastelum called off today. Now we have Nascimento Imavov versus Sean Strickland. Gastelum had some sort of mouth injury, I believe. So now it's not a 5-round middleweight bout, but a 5-round light heavyweight bout. 205 pounds on 6 days short notice. The guy who headlined the final card of 2022 just 4 weeks ago in Sean Strickland, now stepping in on short notice to face Nascimento Imavov. So this is a very interesting matchup. Already have preliminary odds dropped for this, the money line at least. I don't think the overs and unders yet. This just happened today, so we'll talk about it. We'll break it down along with the other 11 fights on this card. So 12 fights in total, a lot of UFC newcomers, a lot of very inflated money lines, just a lot to talk about. But there are some money lines I like. There are some overs and unders I do like, so I'll touch on those. If you're new to the channel, my name is Patrick. I break down every UFC fight card, in great detail, and then I do my best bets and props later in the week where I release all of my bets for the fight card, all of my recommended props and things like that. And I do live streams, but that'll start next week. I'll do my weekly live streams. Next week will be a pay-per-view week, so I'll have Couch Warrior to co-host 2 other handicappers for the first pay-per-view of the year. But yeah, I'm flustered. Crazy news, a crazy new main event, but luckily we still have fights to talk about. So without further ado, let's break into it. Okay, the first fight of the prelims, the first fight of the UFC calendar this year. We have a women's flyweight bout between Priscilla Cachoeira, Zombie Girl, and Sijara Eubanks. So, at first glance, not the best high-level fight, but it should be an exciting one. You've got Sijara Eubanks, who has been around the UFC and Invicta for a while now. Most of her fights as a pro are high-level ones at that. 7-7 record, though, so, kind of a coin toss if she wins or loses. Priscilla Cachoeira, a much better record on paper, 12-4. But if you factor in that, she has 8 UFC fights, she is also 4-4 in those. Both of these girls are kind of 50-50 fighters. Now, I would say Cachoeira has 3 things that make me really like a mid-tier to lower-tier women's MMA fighter. That is the durability. She has never been stopped by strikes. She has very good cardio. She can keep moving forward like her nickname, would suggest. And she's the more physical girl in the ring a lot of the time. She's going to have a height and, actually a slight reach disadvantage, but she's going to have a height advantage, overall stature advantage. She was the more, the more true bantamweight when she competed in that weight class. Sijara Eubanks, kind of this in-between fighter, right? She's too small for the physicality of bantamweight, but she's too big for flyweight in some ways. She has trouble making weight, which I'll point on as kind of a reason I don't like her in this matchup. Missed weight against Melissa Gatto, got finished by a round 3 body kick TKO. And this is not a new problem. She's 37 now as Eubanks. This weight cut problem has plagued her since The Ultimate Fighter back in 2017. So this is going on 6 years of an issue, not getting any better with age, I'm sure. Takedown accuracy not the best for Eubanks, who is the better grappler. Cachoeira the better striker, even though, Cachoeira, not much is required of a wrestler to take her down and control her. I think the last time she was stopped by submission was by Jillian Robertson a little over a year ago by round 1 submission. So that is on the table for Eubanks. But the money line is where it kind of gives me cause for concern because Eubanks is a minus 225 favorite at this point and Cachoeira a plus 190 underdog. So kind of a weird spot here. I would expect this to be a lot closer. I see a lot of value on Cachoeira. She's a finisher. She's the more dangerous woman here on the feet by far, right? She's got poor striking defense, but I think it's going to really be a struggle for Eubanks to get in range against Cachoeira, who's going to be stalking her down the whole time. 4 wins in the UFC for Cachoeira, 3 of them by knockout, 2 round 1s and a round 2 stoppage. So Eubanks has proven to be tough. Like I said, the only time she's been stopped by strikes was her last fight against Melissa Gatto, but she's got the cardio problem. And if you could cross paths and have Eubanks do a lot of wrestling and grappling attempts early, wear herself out against kind of that strong physicality of Cachoeira. Cachoeira could take over in rounds 2 and rounds 3 and possibly put the lights out of Eubanks. So give me a round 3 stoppage, a TKO stoppage for Cachoeira. I'm seeing a lot of value. I liked it at plus 170. I like it more at plus 190. I probably won't bet this fight just because I don't want my first bet of the year to be on Priscilla Cachoeira as an underdog. But, I will be taking a look at her knockout prop. The overs in this fight look enticing because it's a women's flyweight and it's plus money, the over 2.5. But, looking at their skill sets, it would kind of, the eye test would make you think it's going to go under. So kind of a discrepancy between what I feel is going to happen and what the odds, kind of are leading me towards. So probably a stay away fight for me, but I will be looking at that Cachoeira knockout prop. Up next at flyweight, we've got the returning Jimmy Flick taking on Charles Johnson. This is a spot where this should be a quick breakdown because I don't have a whole lot to say. It's very hard to analyze fights, matchups like this when one guy is coming off of a long layoff. Jimmy Flick made his debut in the UFC against Cody Durden in December of 2020. So it's been a little over 2 years. He called it quits a little bit after that in the spring, I believe, of 21. It was some personal reasons. I'm not quite sure why, but he's a very good submission fighter. He had a great arm triangle on the Dana White Contender Series. He had that flying triangle over Cody Durden. There's a lot of spots, even in the LFA, where he was losing fights before he won the fight. And using that, slick jiu-jitsu, he was able to just wrap up his opponent's limbs and get the job done. Charles Johnson has been playing this game a little bit with guys. He had to play that game with Muhammad Makayev, who is a very talented young fighter. And Charles Johnson was able to stay safe against any sort of submission threat. In that spot, there have been spots in the LFA where Charles Johnson had to stay safe against, submission threats. I really just think that the difference is the activity level and the size here. Charles Johnson will be he's been a much more active fighter so far, coming off of a win, a one that he made it a lot closer than he should have against Salgas Zumagulov, but it was very recently. And Charles Johnson's such a long, rangy kickboxer, very talented, and that's the exact skill set that gave Jimmy Flick trouble at times. Whenever there would be like a slick striker, even somebody I don't rate on the level of Charles Johnson, but like Cody Durden, just a scrappy boxer on the feet, was really piecing up Jimmy Flick up until that moment, like 3.5 minutes in, when Durden caught the kick and then got triangled out of nowhere. I'm sure he didn't see that coming. So give me Charles Johnson to win. The problem is playing this is pretty much impossible because you've got Charles Johnson, who was bet all the way up to like minus 450. Now it's come back down to around the minus 350 price tag, and still money's coming in on Charles Johnson. So again, Jimmy Flick, you've got a guy who made his debut in the UFC and then called it quits at age like 30 or 31. And now coming back, I mean, just the mindset there. It's kind of a common theme. You don't bet on retiring fighters, but what about the ones that come back? Usually when fighters come back after a layoff, you get like a step down in competition or like a lateral step. This is a step up in competition. So give me Charles Johnson. I think he finishes this fight, honestly. The unders would be a good way to play this. Even though it's a flyweight fight, the unders in this one, you could just see the skill gap in both guys, right? Like Jimmy Flick could have that flash submission potential. That could finish under. You could have him get pieced up and Charles Johnson could finish the fight. That could also finish under. We're looking at... Okay, it's tightened up a bit. I'm seeing minus 300 even on BetOnline for Charles Johnson. The under is taking some heat as well. The under is minus 190, the under 2.5. Fight goes to decision, no, minus 240. Okay, now I'm starting to agree with the price tag. I don't see a lot of value on these unders, but Jimmy Flick by round one submission, what are we looking at there? Looking at plus 1,300. Looking at Charles Johnson by knockout. Looking at even money on that. I'm not liking anything about this fight, honestly. I think Charles Johnson should win by knockout, though. Up next at featherweight, we've got two guys who are pretty green in their professional mixed martial arts career at this level. Isaac Dulgarian taking on Daniel Argueta. Daniel Argueta is more of a higher profile guy, more of a well-known guy. He was on The Ultimate Fighter before he got eliminated. He had a fight with Ricky Tercios in the house. where he lost, but he showed pretty good toughness and good endurance and cardio. Argueta is a guy who I believe he wrestled in college before switching to MMA full-time, so he does have that wrestling base. You'll see him use that. But he is more of a wrestle boxer, more so than Isaac Dulgarian. Dulgarian being more of a straight, submission fighter. Looks for the takedowns immediately. Usually gets a dominant position with very little resistance. Either due to how good he is or due to the poor level of his opponent's resumes. I'm not sure. So both guys, pretty young, 26 for Dulgarian, 29 for Argueta, and the same size, 70 inches of reach apiece at 5'7". Daniel Argueta, more of a high-profile guy because he was also in the LFA where he won the championship in a 5-round fight, and he did make his debut already on short notice in a loss, his first one against Damon Jackson by decision. So, minus 180 price tag on Argueta as the favorite, plus 160 for Dulgarian, the underdog. This is a very strange situation here because we've got Dulgarian, who's 5-0, 5 round 1 stoppages. Even in his amateur career, all 4 of those are round 1s as well. And he makes it look very easy. And you can tell it's not just like, he is fighting complete bums on the regional scene. Guys who have very little experience and offered no resistance at all. But Dulgarian, you can tell, is very skilled as well. His technique is very good. He, has a very good awareness of where his hips are at. His balance is on point. And he can really just, catch a kick and then just end up in full mount right off the bat. So, his last fight was in the FAC promotion, FAC 12. I believe that was in the middle of last year. There were some high-profile ex-UFC and guys who you'll probably see in the UFC on that card. And he was in the main event and knocked out his opponent, TJ Britton, by ground and pound in like a minute in. So the guy, not a very good opponent again, but, you can see that there's some power, at least in the hands of Dulgarian. But what happens when he's pushed? Because I've seen Argueta pushed in the LFA. He's gone in fights where he's lost the first 2 or 3 rounds. He's come back and won the necessary ones to win the belt in that decision against, forget who that was now. I believe that was Diego Silva, I want to say, in the LFA, where he won the belt. So let me make sure I got that correct. Yeah, Diego Silva. So he showed very good conditioning and very good toughness. And, he's hit a lot. He's hittable. His boxing is not great defensively. He can be taken down and controlled, Ken Argueta, so that is worrying. Dulgarian could capitalize on that in round 1. But Daniel Argueta, I've seen show the toughness, the tenacity, the fact that he can show the will to win even in the midst of fatigue. Have not seen that from Dulgarian. Not to mention, Argueta's opponents have all been way better of resumes than those of Dulgarian. So the proven cardio, proven toughness, better experience. I'm going to take that over the speed and the technical grappling I've seen from Dulgarian. But overall, I'm not touching the money lines. I do like the unders. The fight doesn't go is around minus 130, and the under 2.5 is at plus 115. So even though this is a featherweight fight, we're getting plus money on an under 2.5 for guys that largely, one guy 100% finish rate in round 1. Argueta, most of his wins, I believe 6 out of his 8 have actually been, 6 out of his 9 fights have ended inside the distance. So, not bad to get plus money on the unders here. Anything could happen in this matchup. It's a very strange one. Dulgarian looks better, but Argueta has proven to be a better fighter, have those qualities in my opinion. So give me Argueta to win inside the distance, but the bets are on the time props for the unders. Up next at flyweight, we've got Alan Nascimento taking on Carlos Hernandez. A little bit of a strange matchup. It seems like a mismatched fight to me. Alan Nascimento, the Brazilian, Carlos Hernandez, the American. Both guys almost equal, experience in the UFC. Higher level of competition by far goes to Nascimento, who was on the Contender Series years back. A close fight against Raulian Paiva. An even closer fight in his debut against Tagir Ulanbekov. Nascimento is a very dangerous submission fighter out of the Diego Lima shoot-to-box gym with, Charles Oliveira is the standout in that gym in Brazil. Carlos Hernandez, a guy who, he's had a mediocre career outside of the UFC, made his way into the Contender Series, had a close fight, split decision win, got into the UFC last year, 11 months ago against Altamirano. Somebody else making their debut, and another close split decision win that went Hernandez's way. I'm not overly impressed by anything Hernandez does. He seems to have all the tools to be a good striker, but is just a little bit slow, a little bit hesitant at times. His timing is a little awkward. Doesn't commit to things the way that I feel like he has the potential to. His takedown defense throughout his pro career has actually been kind of his weakness. So it's odd that he is more of a submission fighter, right? He's got 4 finishes. All of those were by submission. He also has 4 decision wins. That makes up his 8-1 record, which sounds a lot more impressive than it looks when you watch the fights, in my opinion. Nascimento, 19-6. Very good striking. We just saw Nascimento defeat Jake Hadley, who's a very good prospect, by unanimous decision using a blend of striking and grappling, and he blends the two together very well. Nascimento, catching kicks of Jake Hadley, kicking out the remaining balancing leg, getting him to the ground, and holding top position. Sometimes Nascimento can be, this is a gift and a curse for him. Like if he's being controlled, he's very good at scrambling and being active to work out of that position, threaten things. When he's on top controlling his opponent, Nascimento sometimes does a little bit too much, goes submission over position, can lose that. I think at this level against Hernandez, he'll be okay to submission hunt and actually show off some of his striking on the feet too when the rounds start. So I'm going to take Nascimento. I think he gets this job done inside the distance. If not, just controls his way to a 3-round decision. So the money line, very tough to play. They're all over it. Nascimento kind of has the leg up on Hernandez everywhere here. Minus 330 favorite for Nascimento, plus 255 for Hernandez. I mean, it's just the experience, the speed. BJJ striking, I think, does go in the favor of Nascimento, so I expect him to win. Up next at bantamweight, Javid Basharat taking on UFC newcomer Mateusz Mendonca, coming off of the Contender Series. Mendonca also trains with Mauro Bueno Silva, Nascimento, who we spoke about, Charles Oliveira, all these fighters from the UFC that train at Diego Lima Shoot to Box in Brazil. 10-0 record, a blend of, knockout, I think 3 knockouts, 4 submissions, and a few decision wins there. 7 of those 10 wins are in round 1, though. Some sketchy competition from the regionals for Mendonca, who's 23 years old and going to be giving up quite a bit of size here against Javid Basharat, who's 5'9 and 27, with a 13-0 record for Basharat. Already in the UFC, already passed the test of the Contender Series, passed the test of a guy like Trevin Jones over 3 rounds, avoided the power, outstruck him, outgrappled him, went in there against Tony Gravely last September, I believe it was, and gave a very good account of himself, flipped the script on Tony Gravely, had some grappling success against Gravely. I mean, it seems like this guy can pretty much do everything. Don't get me wrong, Mendonca has some very good, well-rounded skills as well, but it's the way that Basharat blends the skills together that does it for me. Mendonca, of course, power in his hands, although he's kind of deceiving the way he looks. He doesn't seem like he'd be a power puncher at this weight class. 1-2 KO flatlined his opponent on the Contender Series last year for the entry to the UFC. Has a nice wide stance where he can use his kicks very well without really telegraphing them, and then return to his stance without losing balance. A nice, fast, snappy jab. And then once he stuns you against the cage, he'll jump on your back and transition all sorts of, go from triangle to armbar, try to grab your back, put the hooks in for the rear naked choke. I mean, the guy has pretty much done it all. It's been a sketchy level of competition, but he looks pretty good doing it. Now, it's just, again, it's the fluidity of how Javid Basharat blends the skills of mixed martial arts together. He can wrestle. I think he's the better wrestler. He sets up traps with his striking, I think a little bit better and better timed. He's got a little bit more defense going for him. I've seen Mendonca really get excited and crash into the pocket and get hit himself. He has been dropped advancing against some pretty low-level guys. He's been dropped and hurt. So Javid Basharat, I just think, is on a different level at this point. The over-under is kind of hard to predict in this fight because you do have Mendonca, who has only been outside of round 1 3 times. So I kind of lean the under because Basharat can finish the fight by choke. He can finish it by knockout. He seems to have very good cardio, but he can be patient and just win the fight with high IQ. So he could drag it out to decision if he just wants to maintain, a top position on the ground. So the over-unders are a pick-em price tag for a reason. I don't have a good read on that. I do think Javid wins. I'm pretty confident in him. But minus 360 on the money line, that's a pretty steep price. I don't see a lot of extra value on that to make any, make a very good money line bet on that. So I'm confident in Basharat to get this done. Maybe I'll look at the inside the distance props, but for now, just a pass betting wise. But give me Basharat for the inside the distance victory. Up next at lightweight, out of all of the steep money lines, out of all of the obvious picks on this card, if you want to call them that, this seems to be the most lopsided one. It is a short notice fight between Mateusz Rebecki taking on Nick Fiore. Both guys are making their debut in the UFC. Rebecki was supposed to fight Omar Morales, who pulled out. So getting Nick Fiore on short notice. He is 6-0 as a pro, but with 4 submissions, 2 knockouts. But all of these are in round 1, as we've seen before on this card. That's a red flag. And the level of opponents, just not very good, right? The ones that I was able to see, the world famous jobber Jay Ellis, who's like 10 and 1,000. Nick Fiore actually got 2 of his 6 professional wins over Jay Ellis. One by TKO stoppage in round 1, one by rear naked choke after slamming him right away in round 1. This guy has fought at 170 before, so I guess that's a bit of an advantage, but I think maybe even Rebecki has at some point as well. So Mateusz Rebecki, coming off of the Dana White Contender Series last season, he's a Polish prospect, 16-1 with 8 knockouts, 6 submissions. He has 2-0 in decisions. 14 finishes all said and done. 9 of those are in round 1. And the guy, he gave up size in the Contender Series and still came out the victor. His opponent, Lidio, was actually much longer and taller, huge reach advantage, and, made Rebecki kind of work for the takedown right off the bat, right? Rebecki ate a big shin to the forehead, a knee to the chin, I think, and just walked right through it, showing toughness, and got the takedown. And from there, it was just a very quick rear naked choke from side control in round 1. So Rebecki is very good. He's got not just the submission and wrestling prowess, but he's got pretty good hands as well. A southpaw left straight that has flatlined people before. Even if he's not getting the submission on the ground, he has crucifixed guys to TKO stoppages. So this guy is a problem, and he has been to the 4th round before and the 5th round before. He's shown cardio through those spots over in Poland. So a decent level of competition. Only 30 years old here. He'll be giving up a little bit of size to Nick Fiore once again, just like on the Contender Series last time we saw Rebecki, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. Rebecki is a minus 725 favorite on the money line. Nick Fiore around a plus 525 underdog. So, the odds kind of speak for themselves here. Are they ridiculous? Sure. Has there been, maybe some stuff from Nick Fiore that I haven't been able to see that could go his way? I mean, he does train with the New England Cartel. Guys like Kelvin Cater, Rob Font have made that popular in the UFC. He has been, the problem here for Nick Fiore is it seems like, from watching the tape, he gets his most success when he gets his opponents down to the ground and grabs a submission. I think he has like 4 rear naked chokes on his record. That's just not going to work. You've got a giant overlapping skill set against you looking at Rebecki. Coming in short notice, debut, padded record. I'll take Rebecki all day. Ways to play this, of course, fight doesn't go to decision. At minus 260, Rebecki inside the distance, I saw at minus 185. I like that a lot. So that's actually something I probably will bet when I finish recording. So give me Rebecki. I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with at 155. And I think he gets the job done probably by a round 1 submission. Up next at middleweight, we've got a very fun prelim headliner between Abdul Razak Alhassan and Claudio Ribeiro. So we've seen Alhassan many times in the UFC before. Round 1 knockout is really his game plan. All 11 of his wins by knockout, all of them in round 1. If he leaves that round 1, he goes on to lose the fight. 0-4 in decisions, and he has been knocked out 1 time by Chaos Williams. Claudio Ribeiro making his debut fresh off the Dana White Contender Series last season, where he scored a 25-second left hook knockout that almost knocked his opponent's head clean off his shoulders. And, Ribeiro fights that way. He's a very long, looping kind of striker, winds up very predictably. He telegraphs everything, basically. His straight punches can be okay, his 1s and 2s, but he's trying to get the job done early, just like Alhassan. 10 wins for Ribeiro, all 10 by knockout. 8 of those are in round 1. So the under 1.5 in this fight, of course, is where it's set. The under 1.5 is like minus 240 or something crazy. Kind of unplayable, but not a bad bet, honestly. Like, it's probably set where it should be. Fight ends in round 1 wouldn't be a bad look in this spot either. A good game plan for Ribeiro would be to try to, weather the early storm of Alhassan, get him out of that round 1, and, you'll expect to see a slower Alhassan, a more fatigued Alhassan. And even though Abdulrazak Alhassan does have that judo black belt as his fundamental base, you don't often see him use it, but there is something that's a red flag for Ribeiro. In all of his fights I've seen pre-Contender Series, a lot of them he backs himself up against the cage, whether intentionally, unintentionally. He finds himself cornered against the cage a lot. A couple of opponents have been able to exploit that, get him to the ground where he pops back up to his feet. Ribeiro does show some good, competent overhooks, underhooks, defensive ways to stalemate against the cage and stay off of the ground. But, Ribeiro, straight punches look okay, big looping, telegraphing hooks and uppercuts. But he is the bigger man here and the younger man. Every tail of the tape advantage goes to Ribeiro. He's 7 years younger at 30 years old. He's 6'1", and he's got a 77-inch reach. So couple that with he just throws more. He seems to be more active, more forward pressure, more high output. Whether it's accurate or not, at least he's throwing more. He's going to have the chance to land a lot more. And in the scope of this being a round 1 fight where both guys fight like heavyweights at middleweight, not a very good game plan in this weight class for long-term success. But in this fight, I think Ribeiro has a good chance of pulling it off. And it's a coin flip fight for a reason. Give me Ribeiro, the bigger, younger man here. I think he has more upside. And if this does leave round 1, he has proven that he can win a fight after round 1. So give me Ribeiro, not my highest confidence pick. Fight ends in knockout. Any form of the unders in this fight, I think, are a good way to look at it. Up next is probably my most anticipated fight on this card at bantamweight. We've got Umar Nurmagomedov taking on Raoni Barcelos. Dagestan, Russia versus Brazil. Young versus old. And, two guys with pretty well-rounded skill sets. 15-0 record for Umar Nurmagomedov, who's a PFL standout, now doing his thing in the UFC. Cousin of Khabib Nurmagomedov, the former champion. And Umar is 7-0 in decisions, 7 submissions, only 1 knockout on his record. But despite the high level of wrestling, he does have some pretty good striking as well. A good timing, some decent boxing as well. Knows how to get in and out of range pretty well. And his kicks are pretty high level, but nothing on the level of the striking of Raoni Barcelos, who is a thing of beauty to watch in the striking. The guy's feints, the traps he sets with his kickboxing, next level stuff. But I gotta say, we are seeing a regression in Barcelos. At 35 years old at bantamweight, he's gonna be 9 years older here. And he's starting to let me down in some spots, right? He's starting to let me down against Victor Henry, let me down against Timur Valiev in a close fight. He's not going to be the bigger man in this fight. He's going to be, pretty much equally sized against Umar. So the odds make it frustrating because we've got minus 700 for Nurmagomedov, moving towards minus 750, plus 500 to plus 540. Underdog for Barcelos is so disrespectful. Because Barcelos is probably the more dangerous man to end this fight. He's got 8 knockouts, in his career as a pro. Nurmagomedov, a lot of submissions, but Barcelos is a championship caliber wrestler, championship caliber BJJ practitioner, but doing it his whole life. And the fact that his striking is the advantage of this matchup says a lot because his grappling is high level as well. 93% takedown defense rating for Barcelos. But again, he's never faced anybody with 5 takedowns per 15 minutes in Nurmagomedov. So big step up in competition. Nurmagomedov has, been taking out guys like Brian Kelleher, Morozov, most recently Nate Maness. So nobody on the level of Barcelos. But again, Barcelos kind of on that way down in his career. Umar on the way up. I got to expect some regression from Barcelos, and I got to expect some improvement from the already impressive Nurmagomedov. So give me Nurmagomedov to win the fight. Grappling, cardio, the size, the youth, all go in the favor of Nurmagomedov. So now here's where it becomes interesting because on a bad night at minus 700, you would really want Nurmagomedov to still win pretty easily, right, on a bad night. But again, if Nurmagomedov has a bad performance here and Barcelos has an average or above average one, I think Barcelos could win this fight. So it's tempting the gambler in me, the mathematics, just like the value gambler in me, to put at least a half of a unit at like plus 550 or whatever it might climb to. But I am going to pick Umar Nurmagomedov. I don't know if I'll get there. I'm going to try to hold off on betting Barcelos here, but if I do, it would just be like a half of a unit solely for the mathematics. Everything career-wise and skill set-wise, I think Nurmagomedov should win. This reminds me a lot of the Merab Dvalishvili fight versus Jose Aldo, where you've got an older man in Aldo, more experience, more of a well-rounded game plan, but if he's on the defense the whole time against a relentless wrestler, a younger guy with cardio for days, we saw how that played out. It was a close fight, but ultimately Dvalishvili won the fight. So that's how I see this playing out. Give me Nurmagomedov to win by decision. Up next at women's bantamweight, we actually have two top-ranked bantamweights battling it out right here. Ketlen Viera from Brazil taking on the American Raquel Pennington. And Pennington seems like she'd be older than 34 years old at this point. She's been in the UFC forever, pretty much faced everybody. 16 UFC fights, going 11-5 in those, so not a bad record, especially when you consider that all 5 of Raquel Pennington's losses are to just champion after champion. Germaine de Randamie, Jessica Andrade, Holly Holm a couple of times, and the title fight that she had where she got stopped in round 5 by Amanda Nunes. So, her losses can be, written off. She is 9-6 in decisions. She's got decent boxing, not the most technical, not the most powerful, but Pennington is constant with it. She gets in a good rhythm and can start, really, piling on the striking volume as the fight goes on, coupling that with some strong clinch work as well. She will look for takedowns in the clinch or just hold you there, stalemate you there, and work knees and punches that way. Coming off of a 4-fight winning streak, not the best, but most recently defeating Aspen Ladd, getting her out of the UFC by decision. Ketlen Viera is coming off of 2 back-to-back 5-round victories. The very controversial one against Holly Holm most recently, where Holm actually controlled Viera in the clinch, oddly enough, which is even why that fight was close. But Viera has got a very different style than Pennington, a flat-footed, stalking style where she's got very strong strikes. Not the highest output in general, but her 3-2 combination is pretty good. Slaps that hook out there, gets a nice strong right straight. And her jab is very effective as well. Pumps the jab out there pretty accurately and effectively. And she's got a BJJ and a judo base as well. And as physical as she is, being the bigger woman in this matchup, I don't think that cage clinching style of Pennington is going to be as effective as it was by Holly Holm, who is a bigger woman. Pennington is going to risk ending up on bottom. And if she ends up on bottom with Viera on top, I think it's trouble for her. I think she'll end up, riding out the rest of the round in that position. So I could see control time going in either woman's favor here. But I could see the more eye-catching shots and maybe even more striking output going in the favor of Viera. I just like her striking more. I think it's more effective, more powerful. And Pennington has some better stats, but again, you're talking about her racking up triple-digit strikes over Marion Renault, her racking up triple-digit strikes over Aspen Ladd most recently on her way out. So these are spots where I just don't rate her opponent's quality that highly in some of these spots. Now, Ketlen Viera has had her troubles too, knocked out by Irina Aldana. Yana Kunitskaya, really just bullied her in that fight. But overall, Ketlen Viera, 7-1 in decisions. Raquel Pennington, 9-6 in decisions. This likely sees the scorecards. Give me the more physical woman here, the bigger Ketlen Viera to, come away with the decision victory here. And the odds actually make this kind of playable, in my opinion. You're looking at, where are we at here? Ketlen Viera currently at minus 115. Last I checked, it was minus 110 apiece. So money coming in the favor of Viera. Of course, the over 2.5, minus 350. People expect this to go to decision. But I don't mind the money line of Ketlen Viera. I am decently confident in her to get this job done. Ketlen Viera by points, plus 125. Okay, you're not really saving too much there. So I would pick a money line you're confident with or just pass altogether. But I do like Viera to come out with a decision victory. Up next at middleweight, this is another fun fight at 185. We've got Punahele Soriano taking on Roman Kopylov. Soriano, the fine Hawaiian, now a minus 150 favorite. He was a steeper favorite when this opened. Roman Kopylov has gotten some love on the betting market. Now the plus 130 underdog. And Kopylov coming off of a round 3 TKO stoppage over Alessio Di Chirico. And I actually gained some respect I did not have for Kopylov. I'm still not high on this guy. He is the Russian combat sambo master of sport, a guy who was 0-2 in the UFC, kind of had like a loser leaves town type of matchup against Di Chirico, who was in the same boat. And, he was able to show some pretty good striking against Di Chirico, looked pretty improved with the combinations, just the rhythm and the flow state he got in, and eventually got the job done in round 3, showing some good cardio and power late. So this fight with Soriano could go a couple of ways. I think it's either Soriano early, most likely how I see this going, or Roman Kopylov could take over and start peppering up Soriano, winning minutes, flustering him with some good volume later on, and just win a decision that way. Now, there is the glaring weakness of Kopylov's takedown defense. His grappling defense needs some work. A guy who got submitted by Carl Robertson, not a good look. A guy who was getting taken down even when Duraev was death-gassed in that fight back in, I think that was October of 2021. Not a good look. So he was 0-2 in the UFC. Now he beat Di Chirico, who I think is done fighting. And now he's, kind of in a close-ish lined matchup against Soriano, who I like a lot. At 30 years old, the former collegiate wrestler who's got pretty good offensive wrestling, but not defensive wrestling, we've learned, and not the best gas tank. I think Soriano is one of these guys who just has that one pace, that aggressive, explosive power, and if he tries to pace himself, I think he'll become too hesitant. You see this happen with a lot of these guys who are supposedly wrestlers, and they come into MMA and they fall in love with their power and their physicality, but it's undeniable. He hits like a truck. He's got a pretty good size to compare to that of Kopylov. I think he'll be like the more physically thick guy, even though he is giving up a little bit of reach to Roman Kopylov. I just think Soriano is the more dangerous fighter here, and 8 of his 9 wins are by stoppage, 7 of those in round 1. I think this is no different. I'm expecting a round 1 knockout from Soriano. I think he can close the distance quickly and catch Kopylov with something that he can't defend. And at minus 150, not bad. We'll see where this price keeps going. I have not bet it yet, but I do like the money line of Soriano. I'm seeing some of the props dropping, like plus 200 for Soriano knockout. I'm seeing, it's likely due to his record, but I'm seeing, plus 450, plus 500 round 1 knockout Soriano. A little more enticing for a little bit of a stab on that, but overall, the jury is still out on how good Kopylov is in general. Same with Soriano, but I think there's more to prove from Kopylov. So I'd be more comfortable taking the Soriano money line. I'll probably get there. I'm waiting, just getting greedy, seeing if this number changes any more in the favor of Soriano. So give me Soriano, round 1 knockout. Up next, we have the co-main event of the fight card, a very good one at men's 145, featherweight bout between Dan Ige and Damon Jackson. This is very interesting because of the story behind both of these guys. As far as their momentum in their career right now, this is a step down in competition, arguably, for Dan Ige, but he's on a 3-fight losing streak, losing 4 of his last 5. Now, Damon Jackson, this could be called a step up in competition, but he's on a 4-fight winning streak, just coming off of a big upset over Pat Sabatini. Not only I think he was the underdog in that spot marginally, but Damon Jackson was a guy who, if he was going to win, I think most people assumed it would be by decision or by submission. Damon Jackson knocked out Pat Sabatini in round 1. So, I think it was like a glancing kick and then some follow-up ground and pound. That was back in September of last year. Very shocking, but a very cool moment to see him get that upset and continue his rise to the top now. Charles Rosa, Camilla Kirk, Daniel Argueta, who we talked about earlier, and Pat Sabatini make up his streak. Now, Dan Ige is losing bouts in the very arena that Damon Jackson is good at. It's in the grappling. So Dan Ige, the better striker in this matchup, no questions asked. Not completely one-dimensional, though. He does have a judo background. He does have BJJ credentials, I believe a black belt. And he also was a collegiate wrestler, some time ago. But his boxing is going to be superior in this matchup. But Damon Jackson, he sticks to you like glue, gives you no room to breathe. And, the first couple rounds of that fight, he's got pretty good cardio. I see people trashing the cardio of Damon Jackson, especially in one of his last fights, not the Sabatini one, of course, but Daniel Argueta. In round 3, Damon Jackson looked like he was kind of falling apart. He was getting hit a lot, struggling to get the fight down to the mat. But remember what he did in rounds 1 and rounds 2, Damon Jackson over Argueta. It was, both hooks in, a locked-in body triangle for, several minutes at a time. That's going to gas you out. And I'd say it was more impressive from Argueta that he was able to defend the submissions, not get caught up in a choke when in that dangerous position that whole time. Now, Dan Ige, on the other hand, he's losing to Movsar Evloev, getting taken down and controlled like a total of, 10 minutes of that fight, taken down 9 times. Chan Sung Jung, the Korean zombie, even able to control him for 10 minutes of their 5-round fight. So it's been the grappling that's been the bane of existence of Dan Ige. You go back to even Merksad Bektic, was able to, make it a close fight that way. Split decision, and Dan Ige luckily came out the other side of that. But go and look at the record of Dan Ige. 6-6 in decisions. A couple of those were split decisions in the UFC. Edson Barbosa, that was just a close fight in general. But the Bektic fight, the judges had to weigh effective, control time and grappling versus effective striking. So I could see that happening once again with Damon Jackson, who's 22-4, and I believe 1 draw, 1 no contest. And his second stint in the UFC has been a pretty good one. So at underdog odds right now, this has moved from Damon Jackson being the favorite to Damon Jackson being, I believe he opened as he opened as like a minus 160 favorite, quickly bet down to a pick'em price tag. Now I'm seeing plus 105 on Bovada. I'm seeing, on BetUS and on Bet Online, I'm seeing, at least minus 105. So just a slight, almost even money underdog price. I like it for Damon Jackson. I think he can employ that same game plan that's giving Dan Ige trouble in all of these losses and control him there. I don't know if he ends the fight against Dan Ige, who's proven to be pretty safe against these grapplers, but you can backpack your way to victory. I think that's what Damon Jackson is going to do. So give me Jackson here as the underdog pick. At plus 105, I'm ready to put a moneyline bet on him right now. We'll see where it goes. Maybe it keeps going back and forth, but I might take a stab on that plus money on Damon Jackson on that money line. Okay, let's talk about the new main event of the fight card, which is no longer Kelvin Gastelum versus Nasruddin Imavov at middleweight for 5 rounds. Now with Gastelum pulling out due to injury, we have short notice replacement, 6-day replacement, Sean Strickland taking on Nasruddin Imavov, 5-round fight at light heavyweight. Everything changes with this fight, in my opinion. The odds that I see on BetOnline right now, one of the bookies that has it already, this just happened today. Imavov is a plus 100 underdog. Sean Strickland a minus 120 favorite. So this is kind of like almost a pick 'em price tag. I'm not sure where this line will go, but one of the main narratives and the main questions in the fight with Imavov versus Gastelum was Imavov is, a lesser experienced guy. He looks great. He has some submission potential, some good grappling and scrambles in the ground, good top pressure, ground and pound. His striking is very clean and accurate. Cardio left a little bit to be desired in certain spots for Imavov, but overall, the guy looked like he could rise to the occasion and take out a seasoned veteran, former interim title challenger in Kelvin Gastelum. I thought he would beat Gastelum over 5 rounds if he got the work done early in rounds 1 and rounds 2, and then just grabbed one of those later rounds, 3 through 5, he could win a decision. Probably wouldn't get the tough Gastelum out of there, but I thought Imavov was a good moneyline pick, even at that minus 200, minus 210 price tag. I probably would have paid that price on him to win that fight over Gastelum. This changes things because, Gastelum I was okay with, evening out his experience, but his trajectory in his career had gone down. Never really looked the same since the Israel Adesanya war. I think he had lost like 4 of his last 5 fights. Just looked like a guy where, Imavov could rise to the occasion and enter into that upper echelon of middleweight with Kelvin Gastelum as that stepping stone. Sean Strickland, not so much that guy. I mean, he is coming off of 2 straight losses now, having just fought in the last UFC fight card December 17th. So 4 weeks ago, this guy fought 5 rounds against Jared Cannonier, lost a split decision. I agree with the decision, in all honesty. He kept it way too close, probably had the worst end of the striking exchanges and a lot of the key moments there. But I thought that if it would have gone to decision, obviously Sean Strickland would have used his high-output boxing and forward pressure and cardio to break Cannonier and just, kind of take over the fight. That did not happen the way I thought it would. So very one-dimensional is Sean Strickland. You've got the thing about him where he just fought. You never want to see somebody on short notice, 6 days, and they just fought 5 rounds against Cannonier. Who knows how his hands are? Who knows how his shins are? Who knows what else is kind of still hurting from that, that fight last month? I don't know. But the experience and largely the UFC resume is still pretty strong. He had that nice long streak before Alex Pereira knocked him out. Sean Strickland, his last knockout was over Brandon Allen. Under 1.5 round knockout, a pretty clean one. So he does have power in his hands, and that was at 195. So this fight being at light heavyweight at 205, I don't know who this is going to favor more. Maybe this favors Sean Strickland. Maybe he has more power at that weight class. Maybe Imavov is a beast at 205 pounds as well. I don't know. They're both bigger framed guys, but both guys are former welterweights. So who knows who the weight cut or lack thereof is going to favor. A lot of question marks. Again, you've got Sean Strickland minus 120, Imavov plus 100, so almost a pick-em price tag here. I don't know where the money's going to go. I don't recommend betting this fight. I don't like betting spots like this where, because I lean Sean Strickland. I think the experience and the high output striking, still, I'm going to lean with that narrative, even though it's one-dimensional. We've seen Imavov slow down. We also have seen Gastelum slow down, so I figured that would kind of be even Stevens there, and Imavov could take over, but I don't like it. I don't like it here. So I'm going to lean Sean Strickland to win a decision in this spot, but with the money line the way it is, it looks very trappy to me. Imavov at plus money. If it keeps going more plus money towards Imavov, bet Imavov, because you're getting a guy who had a full camp, a younger guy, ready for a big test at 5 rounds. But man, the new weight class, the short notice, this all just screams stay away from me. So I can't bet either guy here. Give me Sean Strickland to win by decision as my lean. That may change as the week goes on, but I don't see myself betting any aspect of this main event, unfortunately. And there you have it, you guys. All 12 fights broken down for UFC Vegas 67, which is now headlined by Nasruddin Imavov versus Sean Strickland at light heavyweight, 5-round, 205-pound bout to kick off the first fight night main event of 2023. So I'm excited to be back in the chaos of this sport that we know and love and make money on. So let's do it again. Let's kick off the year with a win. Like I said at the top, I will be having my live streams returning next week, not this week, but stay tuned on Wednesday or Thursday. I will have my best bets and props video out as always. So welcome back, you guys. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and check out BetUS Sportsbook, who I'm partnered with. My promo code is Addicted2Combat125. A good way to kick off your bankroll and add a little bit of free money to bet with on your bankroll at BetUS Sportsbook. They will match your initial deposit as a new customer 125% on the sportsbook. Free money to bet with and make money on fights or any other sport that you guys like that I don't know about. So hit up that promo code Addicted2Combat125. Easy way to help out the channel as well as subscribing. And I will talk to you guys next time. Cheers.